flourished his crystal-headed cane, and waved it like a magic wand. "Now I say the magic words. Peanut in a trunk. And what is this I find in your shirt pocket?" David's eyes flew wide as Uncle Jonathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a balled-up gray silk handkerchief. His eyes got wider when Uncle Jonathan dropped the handkerchief softly onto the stage with a grand gesture and waved his cane over it. Something moved around under the silk, looking like a tennis ball. Then it grew larger, as though someone were blowing up a balloon. When Uncle Jonathan bent over and whisked the handkerchief away, everyone yelped in surprise. A tiny elephant, about the size of a white rat, was marching around in a circle on the stage. It wore miniature circus trappings, pink ostrich plumes, and a red leather harness. As everyone watched, it raised its little trunk and trumpeted, sounding like a kitten playing a kazoo. "It's not real," someone exclaimed in derision. "It must be a toy." "David, are you trying to pull a fast one on us? Tell us, did you have a toy elephant in your pocket?" demanded Uncle Jonathan, sounding very serious. No," replied David. "I didn't even have a real one." Everyone laughed again at that, but Uncle Jonathan held up his hand for silence. "Who said it wasn't real?" Louis and Roswitha turned around, looking at the kids behind them. One of them stood instead of sitting among the other kids in folding chairs, and he had his arms crossed and a smart-aleck kind of look on his face. "It's Hal," murmured Roswitha with a rueful grin. "Yeah," said Louis. Hal Everett was a new kid in town, and he had been attending their school for only the last few weeks of class. In that short time, Roswitha had developed something of a grievance against him because he had edged her out in their history class as the one with the highest average. She had wound up the year with an incredible 98.5 score. But when Hal Everett had transferred in, he had made perfect grades on every quiz and even on the final exam, so his average wound up being 100. As Roswitha had complained to Louis, that didn't seem fair. She had been on board for the whole school year, and if she hadn't come down with a bad case of flu back in the winter and missed a whole week of class, she might have had 100 average too. It was unlike Roswitha to hold a grudge, but Louis almost regretted that he had invited Hal. He had only done it because when he finished handing out the invitations, he suddenly realized that, counting himself and Roswitha, there would be 13 kids at the party. 13! Sitting in study hall, he had hastily scribbled out another invitation. He was on his way to lunch, trying to think of someone to invite, when Hal caught up with him and said, "Everyone tells me you're having a party." "Kind of an end-of-school celebration," Louis had explained. Hal had sighed deeply. "I wish I could do things like that." "Why can't you?" Looking miserable, Hal had shrugged. "New in town," he said, in a choked-up kind of voice. "Don't know anybody." He looked away as if embarrassed. "I don't suppose you've got room for me?" And just like that, Louis had given him the invitation. He felt sorry for Hal, even if Roswitha wasn't terribly fond of him. Now Louis hoped that Hal wouldn't be too much of a smart-aleck as Uncle Jonathan called him to the stage. Step up, Uncle Jonathan was saying to Hal, and he moved through the crowd, a tall, skinny, pale kid with a grave, serious face. "Right up onto the stage," said Uncle Jonathan, in an encouraging tone. "All right, Mr. Doubting Thomas, if that is your real name." "It's Hal Everett," said Hal, sounding a little irritable. "I apologize, Mr. Everett. All righty then. I lift the small elephant like this." Uncle Jonathan bent over and retrieved the tiny animal. He held it in one hand as it waved its trunk. "And I hand you the silk handkerchief that concealed it. Now, I will ask you to hold all 4 corners of the silk together, making a kind of pouch. 2 corners in your left hand, 2 in your right. Yes, that's good. Now, I'm going to place Jumbo Jr. here very carefully into the handkerchief. Very well. Now, bring all the corners together and hold your elephant in a bag, all right?" Hal did as he was instructed, with David looking on curiously. The dangling silk pouch certainly looked as if it contained something alive. It moved restlessly, bulging and swinging gently. Uncle Jonathan raised his wand and intoned, "Transformatio Columbia Libia." He nodded and then said, "Now, Hal, do you agree that you are holding the miniature elephant in that handkerchief?" Hal shrugged. "Yeah, I guess so." And you think it may not be alive?